Gaming tournaments can be pretty wild. Things can go wrong. Players can do things you don't expect. Hi folks, it's Falcon and today on gameranx, the 10 craziest things that happened at gaming tournaments. Starting off at number 10, in a tournament not long ago, back in July, a top-tier Call of Duty competitor, competing for a $200,000 prize, had a trigger on his controller malfunction right in the middle of the match. He remapped the buttons to continue playing, but he didn't win. He was so stressed out he actually didn't grab his second controller, which he had a second controller. But it's hard to blame him. Honestly, that would stress me the hell out. Having a broken controller in a game where you're not competing is definitely going to be a stressful thing. And thinking it from the perspective of a very high-stakes competitive situation, that seems like one of the most stressful things you could go through as a gamer anyways. Well, at least a gamer that's not doing anything like outright dumb. This is, of course, not his fault in any way, and it's hard to imagine how exactly I would react to the exact same thing. 200K on the line? Youch. Moving on to number 9, another one that happened very recently was back in August when the Swedish team Alliance's captain made a big blunder in a Dota 2 match. The blunder is he accidentally selected Gyrocopter when the intent was to actually ban him from selection. Gyrocopter is a hero that they just didn't want to come up at all during the match because, well, he looks kind of like a goofy Robotnik that isn't very useful in a lot of situations. And as soon as he locked in Gyrocopter, he goes, "Oh my god, are you serious? Did this just happen?" Clearly understanding the gravity of the situation, and with a big yikes, getting a few reactions from the other team, somebody's mic picked up a player saying, "Yep, they're goners now." I mean, even so, they actually did a pretty good job in the match. It's just that Gyrocopter, the, one they didn't want in the match at all, just didn't fit in with their strategy, was actually ambushed in the woods, and, well, that's what happened. That was when the chickens came home to roost. Coming in at number 8, a 16-year-old dethroned the 7-time champion Jonas Neuerbauer at the Classic Tetris World Championship in Portland, Oregon, using what is considered to be a more demanding technique than what people generally use when playing Tetris. The technique's called hyper tapping. Basically, it's tapping the button repeatedly rather than holding it. The point being to circumvent the repeat rate, which on the NES is fairly slow. If you hold a button down, it only repeats every so often, whereas if you press it quickly, it repeats quicker. And doing this allows the player to move the piece quicker across the board. Now, that's obviously something that gives you an advantage, but it also does take more thought, more effort, and can actually be a lot more difficult to play. However, if you've mastered this technique on NES Tetris, at very least, you're going to be a more effective player at Tetris, and that's exactly what 16-year-old Joseph Saley did. You can check out his Twitch channel at JDMFX_. He mainly plays Tetris, and he plays it like an absolute madman. Coming in at number 7, back in 2018, during a Halo tournament, a player by the name of Tyler Spartan Gonza was battling for the top 3 spot in a $1 million tournament in a world championship, and he was on a streak, which as we all know is something you would want to be on in a tournament. He was sprinting to get to a camo spawn, and wouldn't you believe it, his controller shut off, which is just 100% the worst possible thing. No one wants that to happen. It was actually because of this controller malfunction that his team didn't get a hold of the camo and the other team did, which was ultimately what allowed the other team to win the match, which again, really sucks. Gonza posted a picture of his Xbox controller with him flipping the bird at it, a phrase we birds don't take lightly. Members of the other team expressed sympathy for it. Obviously, nobody likes the idea of this happening to a player, and it kind of sucks that that's why they won, although money doesn't really feel any different whether you won because of a controller malfunction or whether you won because you were genuinely better. Still, I mean, that sucks. Moving on to 6. Back in 2017, an Overwatch pro by the name of Jonas Zappis Alakurti had 2 conflicting things on his schedule: a friend's wedding reception or the first match in a $100,000 Overwatch tournament. These were both happening at the same time, and, well, instead of choosing one, he decided, why not both? In a lot of finals in tournaments, they're played out in arenas where there's an audience and all of these types of things. But in the case of preliminary matches like the one that we're talking about right here, generally competitors are doing it from home, and because the hotel this wedding reception was taking place at was actually not very far from his home, Alakurdi was like, I could probably do both these things. So at some point during the dinner, he snuck away in his suit, probably feeling a lot like a spy, at least thinking about the spy thing for a second. Ooh, I'm sneaking away in my suit. And won the match. He said the main reason he had to do it this way is that usually tournaments are a little more flexible with these types of early matches, or they announce schedules much earlier so people can plan out what they're doing. And generally the whole thing worked out. At 5, at the Super Famicom convention, which takes place in Greensboro, North Carolina, not only does the event celebrate Nintendo's franchises and games, but there's also Super Smash Bros. Tournaments, of course. How could there not be? When you have a big Melee tournament, you have a bunch of Melee stations set up for people to play at. And one particular morning at the Super Famicom convention, as people were slowly getting out of bed, getting ready for a Super Smash Bros. Tournament, someone else got up very early and went around to every single one of those game stations and paused each and every one of them on an image of Donkey Kong shrugging, his taunt in Super Smash Bros. Melee. Just to be clear, there isn't really any use to this. It's just funny. I'm sure everybody came down and saw them and had a good laugh and went into the tournament in good spirits, and probably appreciated the silly little pseudo prank. And at number 4, the 2017 Hearthstone tournaments, which took place in the Blizzard Arena, in what is generally not a particularly animated esport, with a few players that are particularly animated, such as Hyun Kim, also known as Coco Sasa, who is playing against Wang Bei's Xinyu, and after summoning a powerful card, made a waving gesture, which is apparently controversial. When this happened, the community completely erupted, calling it inappropriate. Whether he was waving goodbye or waving hello to the card, as he claimed, which kind of sounds like BS to me, but I also think the whole controversy kind of sounds like BS. In fact, I don't know if I consider the waving to be the weird thing that happened. I kind of think the weird thing that happened is that people cared. Coming in at number 3, Daigo Umehara, also known as the Beast, was in a tournament a couple of years ago playing as Guile, and just after KOing his opponent, used the tiny amount of time between the letters KO on the screen and the start of the next match to jump up and grab a Red Bull, because Red Bull is his sponsor. Now, it's important to note that sponsors play a much larger role in a fighting game player and their career than in a lot of other esports, so this is kind of an important thing for somebody like that to do, but his opponent was genuinely just like stumped by it, giving him a massive side eye. Moving on to number 2, a Counter-Strike team showed up for a match late, and it forced them to forfeit the first map in a best-of-3 set, which is not controversial by any means in the tournament they were competing in that was in the rule set. But in 2 out of 3, to be down just by default is a really big problem and sucks a great deal for anyone regardless of how good they are. And it also cost them the win, and although the position they were in the tournament allowed them to walk away from the tournament with $20,000, nothing to laugh at, the team that beat them walked away with $50,000. There was some controversy as to whether or not these guys were hungover, but they also beat a team prior to this and had simply gone to take a nap, which is why they were late, and they eventually said, "We were jet lagged, sorry," and a lot of people accepted that, a lot of people didn't. Esports is very dramatic. And finally, at number 1, there's a guy who will show up at some tournaments who plays Smash Brothers and basically every other game with the controller upside down. He's also done a lot of videos on the internet showing him do this exact thing, and he plays the games just fine. It looks super weird as he's playing, but he's actually pretty good. It's kind of cool to watch, maybe even entrancing to some extent. And a quick bonus for you, a guy by the name of Nikhil Kumawat, also known as Forsaken, ironically enough, got caught using an aim assist program. And we've talked about him before because he was actually physically trying to delete the program off of his computer when he got caught, to the point where officials actually pulled his hands away from the computer. And here's the thing, like, it's not that hard to tell when somebody's using an aim assist program. They didn't give him a lifetime ban, although they could have, because it was his actual second offense and that was their policy. So he should be pretty happy that that's not what happened, actually. So that's everything for today. Let us know what you think in the comments, and if you like this video, please click the like button. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe and don't forget to click the notification bell. As always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.